Hello, my name is Greg, and my topic is the Dakota Access Pipeline protest. The protest began in 2016 after the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approved a pipeline that would run near the Standing Rock Indian Reservation and under nearby lakes and rivers. There were concerns over the construction and possible spill that would damage archaeological sites and contaminate the water that the tribe relies on. There was an overall emphasis on social media outreach from the indigenous leaders and indigenous youth groups, and some of the most common platforms used were Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Some popular hashtags used were hashtag NoDapple, hashtag RespectOurWater, and hashtag StandWithStandingRock. And this essentially led to the influx and support of many protesters. And it is estimated that over 3,000 to 4,000 protesters came to the reservation in response to their social media outreach. And the overall use of digital media enhanced the protest's accessibility, timeliness, and minority representation. And in the bottom right corner, this photo shows a projection of the hashtag NoDapple on a San Francisco building. And this shows that how far the digital media had brought the agenda of the protest. The protest was overall unsuccessful, though, because the pipeline was completed in April 2017 and it opened in May 2017. And since then, in 2017, the pipeline had 5 major spills. As a background to Gersoslu, he argues that the mainstream models of democracy does not grasp the significance of public sphere movements, and he called for an agonistic perspective, which should be approached instead. And this was in response to several public sphere protests that were occurring at the time, and the modern form of democracy was too limited to consider these protests, and this would lead him to arguing for an agonistic perspective because it would be more inclusive. Gersoslu would interpret the Dakota Access Pipeline protest as supportive to his argument because the protest shows the failure of modern democracy to consider the outspoken concerns of a minority. And these concerns were overall valid because there were subsequent spillages that happened and ended up damaging their source of water. And this protest also shows a wide gap between the public opinion and the governing system. And even though digital media enhanced the protest was ineffective in attaining its agenda. This overall leads to my thesis of the lesson learned behind the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, that though digital media enhances civic activism, it is currently not very effective in producing legitimate legislative outcomes. And the claims that lead up to my thesis is, first, digital media is effective in organizing political protests. This is because digital media exposed the concerns of the indigenous group to people around the world who ended up coming in support. And second, political protests are ineffective in attaining its agenda since modern representative democracy failed to listen to the protesters. And third, digital media does not impact legislative outcomes in modern democracy. And as shown by the Dakota pipeline protests, even though digital media created a large and widespread protest, the protest ended up being essentially useless because the pipeline ended up being built, and it led to the spilling and the contamination of the water and damage of the archaeological sites. And these are my sources used. Thank you.